Hi guys, and welcome to U-Wrench. Today we are looking at auxiliary drive belts, also known as serpentine belts. Now, if your car is making a horrible squeaking noise, then this is definitely the video for you to check out. We're going to get that diagnosed, show you what all the different options and possible causes are and how to get them fixed. Let's get it done. So if we're looking at a squeaking noise coming from our auxiliary drive belt area, also known as our serpentine belt, then there's three main common causes of this, and we're going to look at all three in this video. So our first common cause could be tension, and that could be caused either by the tensioner being worn and not having enough tension to keep that belt nice and tight, or alternatively, of course, over age, that belt can also stretch. So either of those two can lead to a loss of tension. The second issue can be an alignment issue. Obviously this belt is routed around various components in this system, and it's very easy for these to be slightly in front, or so when we turn around and look at the side of it, you know, let's say for example this wasn't quite in the right position, could be a millimetre too far forward or a millimetre too far back, then they're not going to be in perfect alignment with one another. So we can get an alignment issue, and that can cause the belt to squeak as well. And a final common cause is a bad bearing. Again, all of these components have bearings inside them. They're all designed to spin, and therefore all of these have a bearing inside. And again, over time, that bearing can go bad, and that can lead to any of these components squeaking. But how do we know where our problem is going to lie? Well, what we're going to do is going to look at each of those three in sequence, so you can better diagnose this for yourself. So first of all, let's have a quick think about the first option, which is tension. As I mentioned before, the tension will be a lack of tension, which can be caused either by the tensioner, which is located here on this particular car. This has a large spring inside it, and this keeps a certain amount of tension on this belt. And what can happen over time is obviously that spring can start to wear and start to lose that tension, and so the belt becomes a little tiny bit too loose, and that can lead to a squeaking sound. And additionally, as well as the tensioner, as your belt gets older, that's likely to stretch just a fraction over time again, and that can lead to that belt being that tiny little bit too loose, a lack of tension, and that can lead to that squeaking sound as well. And there's a very simple water spray test, which is what we're going to do in a second, and that should be your first go-to test before panicking and delving too deeply into this. What that water test will allow you to do is to diagnose whether we're looking at a belt tension issue, or whether we have to delve deeper and start looking at alignment and bearing issues. Usually, most commonly, it's either the belt or the tensioner. That's going to be your most common cause. So this spray test will allow us to have a look and see if it is that, and if it's not, then we can go further and look at the other options as well. So for a water test, all we need to do is grab a spray bottle filled with normal water. And then what we're looking to do is we're looking to spray some water onto the inside of the belt. That is the ribbed side, that is the inside of the belt right there, not the smooth outside of the belt. So you need to find a suitable location where you can spray some water onto the inside of the belt. So if you touch it, you can feel the ribs, so there might be a little place to spray it, or likewise on the other side, or even up at the top. It will differ depending on what vehicle you're working on, but remember, you need to spray it onto the ribbed side of the belt. Now obviously with this water spray test, these pulleys are all going to be moving, so you want to keep your fingers clear of these. You don't want anything getting trapped. You want to just spray some water in from a sensible distance. So we just performed the water test on this car, and as you saw, when we applied the water onto the inside of that belt, the squeaking noise immediately stopped. So that's going to point us in the direction of it being a bad belt. So theoretically, because we got no noise when we put that water on, then the first thing to change would be the belt. Also the cheapest thing you can possibly change on this whole assembly. So we get the belt changed over, and ideally that should solve that problem. But what happens if you spray water onto that belt and the noise increases? So if you apply your water and you get a louder noise, or it turns to kind of a squealing noise, then rather than the belts, that's going to be starting to point us in the direction of the tensioner losing tension. And so that would be the next logical thing to replace in the assembly. You're going to replace, no matter what it is that's at fault, it's always a good idea to replace the belt anyway. And the belt is, as I mentioned before, the cheapest part of this whole setup. So it's well worth changing that anyway. So you might want to do that, see if you get the same result again with the second water test with the new belt, and if you do, then that's definitely going to be pointing you in the direction of the tensioner. And the other thing to mention, having just done that water test, is when you spray it and if there is no noise, then that would point you away from things like a bad bearing, because if you had a bad bearing, one of these pulleys had a little bit of play in it, you spray water on the belt, that's not going to adjust the movement of that pulley in any way, shape or form. So that will definitely help you discern between the kind of possible options. So if you apply your water and the sound has not changed at all, then that's going to be telling us that it's not the belt that's at fault, and it's not very unlikely to be the tensioner that's at fault as well. So we're going to be looking at the next two possible causes, which is either a alignment issue or a bad bearing somewhere in this system. So looking first of all at the alignment. What we can do is we can do a quick visual check of the alignment, and to do that you're going to start your engine up, and what you're going to do is you want to look at each of these pulleys side on, and you want to be looking at the pulley itself. When you're looking at the pulley, so imagine this pulley, let's turn it side on. You want to be checking the pulley itself hasn't got any slight wobble in it, and in addition to that, you also want to check that the belt is running smoothly over the pulley, and the belt's not moving sideways like this around the pulley. So on our particular car here, we can see we're doing the alignment test. As I mentioned, you need to check all of the pulleys that are on this belt system one by one, and you want to check that they're nice and steady, and the actual pulley itself doesn't have any wobble in it, and also secondary, that the belt is running nice and straight over the pulley. As you can see, most of these are running pretty straight. We've got a couple with tiny little bit of movement in the belt, but not so much that would be of any real concern. And when you're doing your visual alignment test, that can point you in a couple of different directions. If you notice when you look at one of these pulleys that the pulleys appears to have movement in the actual pulley, then that can be an indication of a possible bad bearing on that pulley. And likewise, if you've got your belt and your belt is moving around on the center of that pulley, then that can be a definite alignment issue. And the alignment can be, literally that each of these components is attached onto the engine, and it could be that one is slightly further forward than the next one, and that will kind of pull them out of alignment. Now, if you find you've got an alignment issue, a slight bit of movement in the belt, but all the pulleys seem to be okay, then you can actually buy special belts that are specifically designed to help reduce noise when you have got a slight alignment issue. The main kind of brand of these is Goodyear, and they make a product called Gator belts. I'll have a link for you in the video description below, and it's well worth, if you've got that kind of alignment issue and you're seeing a little bit of a slight backward and forward motion, you can either start to try and realign your components, try and undo the bolts, move them backwards or forwards to try and remove that alignment, or a cheaper kind of faster alternative is to get yourself one of these Gator belts, which allows for a little bit of misalignment, and that will definitely help massively reduce that squeaking noise. Now, last option is a bad bearing in one of these pulleys. Now, we've just done our visual alignment test, and so if you saw any kind of movement in the pulleys, then that would definitely be an indication of a bad pulley, and so you want to have a look at that, which you're going to do in just a second. But again, we can do a visual test to test for potential bad bearings. So what you can do is you can literally go around all of these pulleys and give them a good firm pull, every single one of them, and feel If there's any kind of rattle, it'll only be small, it doesn't have to be very much, but if you've got a little bit of play in one of them as you go around and feel, then again that's going to be a pointer that you've got a potential bad bearing. And additionally, if you think that it's pointing at a bad bearing, once you've done your kind of wobble test manually, and obviously you do that with the engine off, then what you can do then is then start that engine up and come down and listen to each of these one by one, and try and diagnose try and lock down where the sound's actually coming from, because obviously what you would ideally want to do is, if you've seen a little bit of play in one of them, you can either visually see it when you've done your alignment test, or when you've done your wobble test you can feel a little bit of play in it. Then we can confirm that by firing the engine up, getting all of these moving, and then that one that you suspect was a little bit had the little bit of wobble on it, chances are when you go around and listen to them all, then that's going to be the culprit. And some of those, it's unfortunate because some of them are quite easy to replace, such as your idler pulley, $20 to $30, simple to replace, job done. However, it can be like your bearing on your alternator, or even your bearing on your AC compressor. These have all got bearings in them and they can all wear out over time, and obviously that can be a lot more costly. You can often get these refurbished, or you can get repair kits for some makes and models, so well worth looking into rather than necessarily going out and buying a brand new alternator, but that's definitely going to point you in the right direction to find out which of these contains the bad bearing. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change out the belt on our particular car here today, and we're also going to be doing a replacing the tensioner, idler pulley and water pump as well. So we're doing quite a lot on this car. This is a Grand Caravan 3.6. If that's of any interest to you, we'll have a link for you in the video description below. But we really do appreciate you watching, guys. We really do appreciate it. Please be sure to hit that like button before you leave us here on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. We've got loads more great DIY videos just waiting for you to check out. Much appreciated. We'll see you again.